Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. This is Funny Wine Girl, aka Janine Luby. And you've heard me talk about National Humor Month the past few weeks because I had Gab Bonesso on and then Kat Aldrich talking about her one woman show. And of course, I want you to keep laughing, but there are a lot of really great observances in the month of April. And one that we're going to touch upon tonight is Financial Literacy Month. And I've said this before and I'll say it a million times. I really wish I had that kind of training and education, growing up. It's just so beneficial. But many people out there, self-helpy and all kinds of other people would say, well, Janine, unless you've got a DeLorean, stop saying you wish you had it because the past is the past. So I can do something about it now. And I am working on my relationship with money. I told that to my one friend, Kristen, today. Shout out. She doesn't listen. But I told her about that and she just cracked up because I'm like, yeah, no, really, I'm working on my relationship with money and how I talk about it. But so tonight we are going to have a fantastic guest because not only because she is my sponsor, but because I should clarify podcast sponsor. Not that it's bad if she was a different kind of sponsor, but she is my podcast sponsor. But we became friends first. And I just think she's so smart when it comes to explaining things in a way that people will understand and grasp. And I think that's so important, especially with topics like this that can be difficult and that can get really emotional. So I welcome my guest this week. It's Emily Hickox of Budget Through Life. Welcome, Emily.
Thanks, Janine. Always so glad to be here. It's probably one of my favorite places to be, even though we're just on
Oh,
Zoom.
well, thanks. And I should point out too, my little mug here. Got my Budget Through
Oh,
Life
love
mug.
it.
Yeah, I don't remember the last time I had wine because well, not wait, pause. I remember the exact time I had wine, but not recording a podcast because I've been doing so many of these during the day. And yes, folks, I only drink during the day on holidays, weekends, and I'll stop there. But no, I've been recording with coffee, and tonight it's hot chocolate because this does not feel like spring out there.
No, it's been a miserable day, like absolutely miserable. And I'm ready for spring. And that's actually, Financial Literacy Month is usually a lot nicer weather than this. And I've done events outside during this month. I've had a lot of springtime themed social media posts over the years, and today definitely just doesn't feel like that. I'm pretty sure we have snow in the forecast for Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Not a cool thing. Don't like it.
No, you're right, but we do still need to worry about our money, right? So
We do.
whether we like
Yep.
it, I should no wait, let me rephrase that. We don't worry about our money. That's me putting my negative spin on it. We still need to have a relationship with money and be smart and be aware and informed and think about it, but that doesn't mean worrying, right? And we're going to talk tonight because whoo lordy. Um
Mhm.
I don't know for those listening, there's some shit going on in the world, right? So,
Mhm.
those ups and downs and, billionaires cashing in, and I'm not one of them. So, for the normal folks, and when I say normal, I mean folks who aren't billionaires because that is outside the norm in my opinion.
Mhm.
We're going to talk to like you regular folks like us who might be going, "Oh my goodness." Thinking about for me, I'm thinking of my IRA. A lot of people are thinking about their IRAs, their 401ks. So, what we're going to kind of dive into is Emily's going to give us some wise advice or some tips and ideas to how do we approach our budgets going forward when we're like, oh boy, we never want to be sitting worrying, but we do need to be smart. So, I don't even know where we want to begin with that, Emily, but I guess I don't know if you want to do short term and then long term, because I mean, a lot of people, no doubt, are feeling a little bit overwhelmed right now, don't know maybe what to think or what to make of finances.
I think what's really hard about what's happening right now is that it's not just our investments. It's not just our immediate purchases like groceries and clothing and your typical Amazon cart run. It's not just our large purchases like homes and cars. It's literally everything that touches our money is in a bit of turmoil, even if your wallet hasn't felt it just yet. If you have any sort of investments, you have felt it. I don't want you to do anything about it without really sitting down with your financial advisor, and we can definitely talk a little bit about that. And Janine, I know you and I have come across some really great financial advisors in our time working together, and I think most of them would say if your your risk is at the right place for your age and your stage of life, then just leave it alone, because right now, when the market's down, you're buying more, so in the long run things will be okay. They really will. It's stressful, but what we really need to worry about, and I say this a little selfishly because I'm like, oh, this is my time right now. It's budgets, budgets, budgets. Like, if you don't have a budget, this is the time. Like, there's never been a better time to get on a budget.
Oh, I
So
think it's time for me to get busy then.
it is. This is it. It's budget time. So
I wanted
for
to say
you,
before we jump into that real quick, what you were just saying though, I was one of those people when even just a couple weeks ago where I was in like this was like real panic mode where I was like, "Oh my god, I'm going to take all my money out." Not all, but I was like, "I'm going to take like a good chunk of it out and I'm going to pay off my car because what if the world goes to shit? I need a vehicle at least and I want to pay my loan off. What if they take my car back? Oh my god." And I totally spiraled and I did see Megan from Joy World. I was talking to Megan the other day and I said, "Yeah, I was ready to like take it all out." And I said something to Emily and Emily said, "Stop." So,
just stop. Just
yeah,
stop.
stop. But let's talk about budgets.
Yeah. Yeah. I, I thought a lot about what I wanted to talk about tonight. This is just like one of those months where any topic I cover really works, and there's so many things we could talk about. But you said earlier, you don't want to project the worrying about money. But right now, I think it'd be really hard to find people in the norm, in the, standard deviation of the norm, that are not worried to some
Yeah.
degree. And we don't want to panic, but we can worry. And when we're worried, we have to do something about that. Because if we just let it fester, we know how that affects every other aspect of our life. So I sat down a little bit today because I don't sit often. But when I did, I was like, what's the message? Like, what's the most important thing people can do? And I really think having some sort of control is important right now. I feel like the news reports today alone changed 3 times on what is
Mm,
happening with tariffs and what is happening, with the different prices of things that as consumers we're buying all the time, um, and we can't keep up with that. It's just not
yeah.
realistic that we're going to be able to sit on CNN all day long and keep up with the changes and then adjust our personal finances to match those changes. That's not a realistic expectation. And the problem is by the time things do settle and we find a place of, what are there going to be tariffs, what are they going to be, how are they going to trickle down to us, by the time we get there, it'll be too late to do anything because it'll hit you so hard and so fast. And so what I really want to talk about tonight is control.
Mm,
How do we take some control? We can't control the changes that are happening. We can definitely advocate, and we can, you and I and many people we know, went to a protest recently, and we can advocate for our rights and for what we know is right for our economy, but we can't actually change it.
yeah.
So we need to, in our homes, whether we're on our own or we're providing for a family, we need to be having that budget and figuring out what can I tackle today.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think I
yeah,
wanted to stop for a second. I think that's what when I said before about the worry, because I think that's where sometimes we get hung up. It's like to your point, it is don't panic, but worry is good because that could lead to you getting like serious and taking action. But knowing what we can control and what we can't. And that's a great point because whatever is being done by the administration or these different decisions that are causing reactions. And like you said, sometimes it's within one day, it changes so quickly that we absolutely cannot control. So we've got to be careful, I think, about that. But there is no question, I think, to your point, we're all concerned. So let's stop and take a look and do what we can. And I think that's where it's important. So I'm sorry, go ahead. You were saying
oh,
about
no,
like the control and the budgeting, and now is a really good time to do that.
absolutely. Whenever I meet with clients or I do education, without fail, we talk about groceries, and I think that's on a lot of people's minds right now. We had the craziness with the price of eggs. We know that any product that's coming from outside the United States is likely going to have some sort of tariff, and that's going to trickle down to the prices that we're paying. Um, so you know, I often have people push back on me when I question the line item of groceries in their budget. Groceries, in my opinion, is the number one place to start when tackling your budget, when trying to make a change.
Okay.
And when I say groceries, I guess I should caveat that because I've seen a lot of really funny memes of our president defining the word groceries.
Oh my
Um,
god, I just saw that. I think it was the Daily Show. Grocery. It's a
yes,
beautiful
yes.
word, isn't it? Grocery. It's an old-fashioned word. I actually saw someone, I think it was from the Daily Show, going on the street, and it was just, of course, it's satire. So for folks who like, if you don't understand satire, it's meant to be, comical and
Mhm.
making fun, asking people what word they would use otherwise, because and they were busting them. They're like, grocery. That's like so outdated. Why are you still using that word?
It's hysterical. It really is, and you know, often I find two things that happen when I put budgets together for people. The first thing I find is that their actual expenses for groceries might be really high. They might be spending a lot, but oftentimes they're also eating out a lot. So their
Mm.
grocery line item is high and their dining out line item is high, even higher. And you got to step back. And I always step back and say, how can this be? You're telling me that you're struggling, that you're trying to save, you're trying to pay off debt and do all these other things, and you can't get there. Yet you're spending an entire paycheck, if not more than a paycheck, on food. So I'll step back and define it as food. And food does make up groceries and eating out.
Yeah.
So when you're and you and I have talked before about the different kinds of budgets you can have. I think one of the last episodes that I was on, we talked about that. And a crisis budget, we've talked about how
Yes.
when you're in a crisis, you cut back every single thing you can. So we're not in crisis mode yet. We're in like pre-crisis right now, where everybody should be thinking to themselves, are we close to a crisis? And what am I going to change? And the number one thing I would tell people to look at right now is what they're spending on food. There is so much you can do in that area. And I felt like there was a lot I kind of wanted to talk about tonight, but I could probably talk about this topic for longer than anyone's going to want to listen to me. So if we could stick there for a little while, I would love it.
Okay, and we should probably I'm gonna say to folks too, I don't know, would you say it's a good idea? I know you did some great videos on the Budget Through Life YouTube about basically how to make a meal in a way that's affordable too. So I think
Yeah.
that kind of goes to your point too, because I think a lot of people, it's funny because they'd go, well, we gotta have food. But
Yeah.
taking a real close look, you don't have to eat out as much as you do. You can buy in bulk or do certain things that are going to make more sense. But yeah, so let's stick there. Let's talk about food. And I don't want to derail you, but I had a thought pop up, and I'm gonna forget, of course, the three letters, but it's basically like buying into a food source that's farm. I forget if it's CSA or
Oh,
community
it
community.
is CSA. Yeah. It's a community, kind of like a community farm garden.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically paying into, because I know a friend of mine said she got into that. So of course I was Googling last night, and there's Endless Roots Farm in
Yes.
Dalton,
Yes.
and you can like buy, I guess, a package where you're getting so many different kinds of fresh produce every week, which it's fresh, it's locally sourced, and you're not getting pesticides or whatever, and it can be considered affordable. I don't know if that's something you've looked into or not, and I just thought I'd bring that up.
I personally haven't, but it's definitely worth looking into. Definitely it depends on the season what you're going to get. But I think one of the things people don't realize is how many options we do have here in northeastern PA for food sources. We do have a lot of farms, a lot of local produce. We also, I know, I know one of the things we're saying hands off to right now is hands off SNAP. um, and that's the SNAP program, the supplemental nutrition assistance program. That is such a valuable resource for people, and not just if you are on SNAP. What I didn't know until recently was that if you use your SNAP dollars at a farmer's market, they're worth double.
Hmm.
So if you're buying food from a farmer's market and you have $20 left on your EBT card, it's actually $40 at the farmer's
Wow.
market. That's unbelievable information that people really need to know. Um, so there are ways of getting healthy food too. Right now, we do still have SNAP. Right now, we do still have funding for our food pantries. So this is the time. Don't wait. If you anticipate being in any sort of situation where food security might be a problem, or even if you're just like unsure, that's okay. Visit the food pantries because we don't know what will happen with them. I know upstate New York, they had a situation where they had to close down a handful of pantries recently. I'm very involved in the Northern Lackawanna County food share that we run. We're actually running it this Saturday. And I don't know, I can't imagine what would happen to our community if that wasn't available. We have another one real close by that supports a lot of the families in our school district, and they're all, CEO Weinberg pantries. So we just don't know what will happen. So until we do, or even while we're waiting, take advantage, go to the food pantries. And one of the things I do on those videos is I talk about how to make cheap meals, and they're not cheap bad because they're delicious, in my opinion. But I cook them. Is how to take those items and turn them into a meal. And the Weinberg, they also do nutrition classes, and they teach you how to turn the food you get from the pantries into meals. There's a lot of resources online, and maybe do we have show notes that we could put some links to?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I will,
Okay,
anything that you wanna share, send to me and I'll put in the show notes. And,
okay,
I should mention a couple weeks ago when I had, the CEO of Maternal, Family Health on, she talked about too with WIC how that's changed and how they do recipes on their
yeah.
Facebook page, and, like, their how much the food variety has changed. So that's also a great program, and assistance program people can be aware of at Maternal and Family Health.
Yeah, it definitely, that's a wonderful program. And when you just get down like 3 or 4 recipes and you get used to cooking with things that you have available that are cheap, and there are cheap ingredients out there that you don't want to eat forever. You don't want them to be your main source of food for your whole life for nutrition reasons, but things like white rice, potatoes. These are staples that you will get from food pantries that can sustain you for a dozen meals, if not more. So it's just learning how to make use of them, and mix and match and get a little creative with how you put the ingredients together. But you can't do that until you commit to eating at home.
Yeah.
Eating at home is hard for a lot of people. I love when I can give advice about this because I preach what I say all the time. 3 nights a week, my crock pot provides the dinner for us. One night a week, I make a casserole that lasts 2 nights. I have a daughter, Janine. I have a daughter that is incredibly in love with gymnastics, and I too, I guess, have become in love with gymnastics for her. But that's a lot of nights of our week.
Mm.
So between working outside the home full time and doing a side business and gymnastics, there's not a lot of time to cook. But my family eats out 1 night a week at most. And even when we do, it's typically a very affordable meal, and we also, try to eat local. So the first thing you have to do is you have to commit to not eating out as much. I know it's very difficult to say never, but to really, it's just like it's amazing how much people save in their budget when they just cut back 1 or 2 nights a week of eating out.
Yeah. I would say even now I'm a single person, I'm by myself, but similarly, even like with pickup things, like,
Yeah.
if I'm out and I'm like, sometimes it's literally just a whim, it's like, oh, I
Hmm.
could really go for a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich. And, I'll want to go through, of course, and it's not healthy anyway, but like Dunkin' Donuts. And now I got the app a couple months ago when I was having an event in January, and I was so paranoid about getting the coffee early that I wanted to use the app. Well, that damn app, of course they know what they're doing. I'm
Oh
earning
yeah.
points, and if you order ahead on a Monday, you earn points. So now I'm going to Dunkin' Donuts more than I ever did, and I don't even drink their coffee, but, like, for the sandwiches, because I don't like their coffee, but so it's, like, simple stuff like that, but I'm not gonna say I'm terrible at it, because I am proud of myself for the days I talk myself through it, where I'm
Yeah.
like, "You know what? You have that in the fridge, you could just warm that up, you really don't need that," and I do talk myself out of it most times, but I also give in sometimes as well, but that is something I'll probably need to, like, remind myself, "You really that's not a good thing to be doing right now."
And sometimes it's just a mind shift. So instead of telling yourself you can't eat out, 3 days a week, it's or 5 days a week, whatever, it's you can eat out 2 days a week. So thinking about the positive and saying, okay, ooh, it's Thursday. This is the day I said I was going to eat out. Where am I going to go? Get excited for it. Make it somewhat special. Always, think about the nutrition part of it too, obviously, but make it a fun thing. And then when you do get to go out, it's more enjoyable because you've budgeted for it and you've kind of built it up in your head to be this exciting thing.
Yeah. I think that's true probably for and we've talked about this before, whether it's, money or like food, alcohol, whatever, like it's that whole
Mhm.
control and, I mean, it could be, go even if it's not just food, but like going out to the movies or like going to a show, like having those, especially if you're looking at your budget and saying, what can we afford? And making it special for when you can do those things. It's like, okay, we're gonna go to one movie every 2 weekends or one show once a quarter or one twice a year or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You're right to focus on it in the way of I get to do this now and to look forward to it, make it special. It is a mind shift though, you're right. Like that doesn't just happen in a snap usually.
Yes. The other thing that like we have access to now that I can't tell you how many times I've like begged people to try this and they're just like not willing to change their grocery habits, but using apps to buy your groceries. I am not, if you know me at all, I'm not really an app person. My 10-year-old manages my phone. I don't know what I'm doing. I gave up on TikTok because my fingers weren't doing what I wanted it to do. So there's just like no part of me that loves apps. But when I started using grocery apps, I use Instacart mainly. I totally transformed our budget. It was I started doing it because of COVID. That was the main reason that I started using Instacart was to get my groceries delivered during COVID. But now it's become like this ridiculous game for me. Like I'm like, okay, all right, my budget this week for groceries is $100. And I will tell you, for me, for my family of four, we never go above $100. Very rare situations. This weekend we're having a Passover Seder. We will go over $100, but normally we do not. Um, and I will sit there on my phone and I'm shopping while I'm making the kids lunches, while I'm getting myself coffee, while I'm getting ready for bed, and I can be shopping anytime I want. But the best part is that I'm shopping in my home where the food lives. So the other day, perfect example, I knew we were running out of Parmesan cheese, and my daughter does not survive without Parmesan cheese. So I went and added Parmesan cheese to the list. And then I said to myself, wait, I feel like I saw Parmesan cheese like really recently in the house. And I went to the pantry, and sure enough, behind the syrup was Parmesan cheese. So I just deleted it off the list. And then I had $3 to spend on something else. And it is so nice to be able to shop from inside your refrigerator or inside your pantry because the risk of overbuying is so small. And I am sure every single person listening to this podcast throws away food every single week. I don't
Yep.
know anyone who doesn't throw away food.
Yeah.
I throw away food. I compost a ton of food because even though I work so hard to just buy what we need, there's still waste. There's still things that happen. So that is the number one thing. I've had people argue, oh, well, the app, they charge you a little bit more. I always say, give it a shot. If you are still coming in at these outrageous prices for groceries, even paying these like slightly, and it's slightly higher prices, then I stand corrected and you can stop using it. I've never had that happen because when you're not shopping in the store and you don't have all those, the end cap purchases, the
Mhm.
impulse purchases, you're not distracted. Um, and you're not hungry. you
Yes.
you buy a lot less. You really do.
Yeah.
It's Have you tried it? Have you tried online ever?
So I don't I'm not like anything against Instacart, but I guess for me, I was like, I didn't want one more app. But what I was doing during COVID and after, because I'm not a huge fan of shopping, except I do love Wegmans. I mean,
Mm.
that is just my favorite store and I just like it. And but otherwise, I don't care really. Like, and again, shout out to Kristen. She's like, I have to touch my produce. I'm like, yeah, I don't care.
Mhm.
So I do Giant Direct. So
Okay,
I mean, they do have an app. I just don't use it. I don't know why. Cause I just get sick of apps sometimes, but I order on my laptop.
but it's
So
online.
yeah, it is
Yeah.
online. So I will do that. That I do more out of convenience. I don't love shopping, like I said, and it does make it easy because I'll go to the one in Dixon City. It's an easier parking lot to maneuver than the other one in Greenridge. So you pull in, pop the trunk. I find it very easy, although you are giving me ideas because I probably like I make a list, but I'm probably not as mindful about what it is I'm getting. I mean, it's like, oh, and also look to see what's on sale. Like maybe I don't need Tide this week, but I mean, again, it's just me. Those two bottles of Tide I get are probably gonna last me 5 months. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
just one
Yeah.
person. So like if it's like $3 off coupon, I'll use that and get the Tide or whatever. But I need you just giving me ideas about being a little more mindful, like taking a look in the pantry and
Mhm.
in the fridge to see really what I quote unquote need as opposed to just want. Because I will admit, I still kind of do things on a whim, but there's no question that when I'm shopping in the store, I am absolutely picking up those impulse things. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I did it on Tuesday. I was going to make my parents a meal for their anniversary, and it was certainly nothing special. I like to do ground turkey with salsa and cheese,
Mm.
and I was going to buy other things, and I had white rice, jasmine rice, so I ended up adding the jasmine rice, and it came out good. The only thing, my poor mom, she was choking on it, and my dad too. I put a little too much crushed red pepper, and I
Ooh.
tried different salsa this time. It was the mango habanero.
No, that one's rough.
Because my mother, God love her, she's like, well, this tastes the best out of all the times you made it. But then she was like, because she was choking on the crushed red pepper. I'm like, okay, mom, I feel like I should have made it a little bit sweeter or whatever. But there were things I did not have on my list that because those like cheddar puffs, they're like
Oh,
not quite like the Jacks, but they're like the organic, whatever the white. Oh my God.
yeah.
Giant bag of those. As soon as I was walking into Wegmans, I'm like, gotta have those.
Gotta have those.
I
Yeah, they
did
put
not
the
need
real good
those.
stuff right outside, like, when before you even have a cart, there's amazing things
Uh-huh.
right there, and they're not stupid.
No, I think I kind of feel like they know what they're doing.
Yeah, and, like, I don't know, when I was a long time ago in another life, I remember, uh, Giant started having these, like, scan and go, these scanners you walked around the store with, and you were scanning your groceries as you bought them. That was clunky and annoying back then, and I don't think that lasted. But in Sam's Club, so buying in bulk is great if you do it right. So
Mm,
if you're going to buy in bulk, you've got to do a little bit of price shopping, a little bit of comparison, because when you buy in bulk, generally you're buying brand name things. So even though it's bulk and it's a lower price per unit, it still might be a higher price per unit than a store brand item somewhere else. So I do a lot of that. And when you do it on apps, it's easy because I can just sit there for a few minutes and say, okay, if I was to buy paper towels, what really is the best deal? By the way, Amazon Basics for paper goods like that and some household essentials. I part of me hates supporting Amazon, but part of me also wants to save money. So check out Amazon Basics. Um, but I think Sam's Club has an app, and when you walk around there, you can scan as you go. And there's two reasons I love that. One is because I can stay in budget. Now, obviously, my Sam's Club budget is a lot more than my typical weekly grocery budget. So
mm.
maybe once a quarter, I reserve $300 to go to Sam's Club. It's where I get the bulk snacks, dog and cat food, like the big things. So I'll walk around with my phone, scan as I go, and I can watch what the total is. So if I start getting like really close to 300 and I still have 4 aisles to go, I can look at my cart and say, do I really need that bathing suit I just picked up? I'm probably going to look terrible in and put that back. Or, do we really need this snack? That's always a hard thing, is like, what snacks do we have in the house versus what do we really need? And I like that. I like that you can watch the totals. The other amazing
Yeah.
thing is you don't wait in line, and the lines there are bananas. So
Yeah, yeah. So I have to say, here's a funny, and this was years ago, a friend talking about, I forget what she was getting, like stretch pants or whatever. This is years ago. And I'm like, they sell that at Costco or Sam's or whatever. And it's like,
yeah,
when you reach a certain age, we're like, yeah, you get the chicken, some bras and stretch pants all in the same place. You're like,
all the
yep,
tickets.
baby, it's all convenience.
It's very true. I mean, it is very true. It's a very fun store. It's very fun when I'm alone. I love being there all by myself. I don't want to answer to anybody or talk to my children. This last trip, I was watching the budget real carefully this week, and I was there, and I bumped into people I knew, and it stressed me out to no end. I was like, nope, I
Mm.
can't really talk to you right now because I'm budgeting. And I said my quick hellos and moseyed on my way. But the the hardest part about shopping at Sam's Club for me is, depending on which aisle, the one in Dixon City, depending on which aisle you park in, your cart will roll. So
Oh,
I'm one person with like one leg on the cart to keep it from rolling, and one leg on the trunk. I looked ridiculous, but I got all $298 of groceries and animal food into that trunk. I did it.
wow. So you
It
need to
was
be limber to shop there.
You do, you do. You need to really think about the wheels on your cart.
I want to follow up to something that you said, and it's actually going to tie into my guest next week, my other podcast sponsor, Gabby, because it's kind of tied to like less waste. You
Yeah.
had mentioned, it's funny when you said Amazon twice. I'm like, oh, I know a lot of people are, trying to boycott them, but like you
Mhm.
said, you're torn because you don't want to support them, but there's the money, and I will use this just because it's one of my pet peeves. And I'm not naming friends, but I do have a couple friends who do this, and every time they say it, I don't want to be that little mini TED talk where I'm like, you should be doing, but I keep my mouth shut.
My whole
But
life.
I what's that? Your whole life?
That's my whole life.
Well, I can think of one friend who will definitely be like, yeah, and move on. She wouldn't care. But it's the idea of fast fashion. And I know like a lot of it kind of surprises me because the times I mean, I can understand being concerned about money, but I guess I'm just also floored by, and we're all hypocrites to some degree, and I will own my I mean, I'm sure I'm hypocritical in many ways, but I'll own one way. I use K-cups. Now those are not good for the environment.
Right.
Scranton Tomorrow had received a grant a few years ago where they had a station where you could drop off the K-cups, and they were sending them through this company to recycle them. And I went down there like 4 times. I was like, and of course they laughed at me, but I'm like, I'm one person. I have 2 cups of coffee a day. It's not like I'm bringing in a garbage truck and backing it in, relax.
Mhm.
But anyway, I loved that they were doing that, and I felt better about myself.
Yeah.
But I still use them, and I know that's not great for the environment. And when I had Jeremy Luan, I had reached out to him for the Restart Scranton project, and he was there. We were talking about that, and he said something about Nespresso. Well, I looked up Nespresso, like the machines are more expensive. So
Yeah.
you're talking like 300, whatever. But maybe in the future when my Keurig breaks down, maybe I would consider it because it is good for the environment. But I was just thinking though, when you said that, because you're torn, the one thing that does bother me, and it's like this idea too, it's not just what's cheap, but when it comes to clothing, it should be a concern of value too. So
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
me, and again, this we don't really have to dive into this because I feel like it does kind of straddle like both a little bit of budget, but also what Gabby will be talking and I will be talking about next week because she has a business where she's about sustainability. It just, and believe me, like I said, I'm not always making the right choice, but I'm a big fan of consignment. I do buy brand new things, but I'm not like Sheen and Temu, all of these, companies. And I've heard my friends literally say, oh, well, the top was like $4, but like if it doesn't last more than when I wear it for this particular trip, who cares? But that's why we have so much in the landfill. I mean, I think I'm still scarred from watching that documentary on
You
Netflix,
are.
By Now, the shopping
Yeah.
conspiracy, because it showed all of our clothes that we're so proud that we're donating to these countries, and it's in the
In
ocean.
the ocean.
And I
Yeah.
just like, I guess that's just me airing my little pet peeve that like people are like, oh, I got 12 of these shirts for $4. And it's like, So they're not good quality because how in the world could they be? The
Yeah.
other issue I would just ask people without me being like, on a high horse, because you know what happens when you're on a high horse. So I don't want to break my neck, but I do want to just ask people too to consider not just the fact that it's going to end up in a landfill, but who's making the
Mhm.
clothes? Do we
Yeah.
know if it's actually, is it children doing it? If it,
Right.
if even if it's
Right.
not children, if it's adults, how are they being treated? Are they working 18 hours like in dimly lit? I mean, we just don't know the work practices for a lot of these companies. So I would just ask people to like reconsider, because to me that's not an issue. That's because usually it's not a reason like it's all I can afford. I've never heard one person that I know of say that. It's literally been like, well, they're lightweight, I like them, and if they don't last, I don't care. So that
Right.
attitude to me isn't about money. That's just convenience or whatever.
I will say that's my experience too. Is that exact example about, well, I just needed to last this trip. I've actually heard people say that to me a couple of times now, and I do struggle with that because I'm the kind of person, I either buy it secondhand or I buy it really nice. So I actually, this sweater I'm wearing, I've had for about 10 or 12 years. It was bought secondhand, but it's also a really fancy brand and it just lasts. But I do that with a lot of things. So my husband, I've actually like brought him over the threshold into the land of the better quality things because he sees the benefit now of buying nicer shoes and buying nicer slacks, and that if we get these things, if we kind of are investing a little bit into what we're wearing, and we do know the companies more, so we do have a little more disclosure of where they're being made. It's still not great, but it's a little better. I very much worry about where things are coming from and how they're getting here, how they come to be.
Yeah. You make a great point
Mhm.
there though, because I know people years ago, I think it was, I don't know if it was, I don't think it was my mom, but maybe someone she worked with, or maybe I had watched on TV about like that whole idea of, okay, this sweater might be $200, but you're going to have it for 50 years. You know what I mean? Like those
Right,
things where
right.
it's like, I guess I grew up middle class. I grew up, so it's like I didn't think of we didn't buy expensive stuff. But then when I heard that, I was like, oh, but it does make sense for certain things, like you're saying,
Yeah.
especially things. And I've heard this a lot too with like when I got into running is where I really thought about it. I would have never spent like $150 on sneakers before. But to your
Mhm.
point about like with your husband and the shoes, if it's something that's not only going to last you for a long time, but it's important. And what's important, our feet are so
Right.
important. I think my chiropractor has like slammed that into my head because it's like what we stand on and like our whole body and how like from the bottom up, like you do need good shoes because if you have crappy ones, you're gonna like actually impact your health.
Yeah, you do. And it's so many, there's so many things where that applies, where it's worth making room in the budget. It's worth planning it out to buy nicer things. When I work with parents, I often talk to them about the different accessories that they buy their kids. So, if you see my kids, you'll see they have Pottery Barn Kids everything. They have LL Bean, and the reason they have that is because I bought it once 4 years ago and it's still fantastic. Their backpacks get like a real deep clean, probably 2 to 3 times a year. They've had these backpacks since kindergarten, and they're going to have them for a few more years. I use this one example whenever I'm trying to convince my husband to like buy something nice. I use the LL Bean toiletry bag example. So my parents bought me an LL Bean, monogram toiletry bag when I went away to college when I was 18. I turned 40 in a week. I use it all the time. It hangs in my bathroom as like extra storage space for cosmetics. It comes on every trip with us. It's been to Europe like 4 times. It's been to the Middle East a dozen times. Like it's gone everywhere, and this thing looks brand new. And
Wow.
when you spend the money, when you invest in things like that, that when that thing ends up in a landfill, I'll also be in a landfill. Like we're gonna go together.
You'll have your
So
feet sticking in it.
yeah, I mean, I think it should come with me. It's like it's been
You'll be
like a
like
big
the
part of
Egyptians.
yeah. I feel like I buy, nicer suitcases, like things that people trash often, and they're big and they take up space. Um,
Yes. I
so
think
so
we have that disposable culture.
yes,
I don't think we do. I know
we
we
do.
do. And
We
I
do.
you know what I mean? Like, and again, I'm not trying to be like I'm better than because like you mentioned the suitcase. I remember a couple years ago when I was going to visit my friend in North Carolina, I went up to Marshall's or one of those TJ Maxx, whatever, and it was like $50, but that's not a good suitcase. And I think
Mhm.
the mindset is usually a lot of times like, oh, I need this. And you run out to the store and you fill that particular need without planning, without control, without budgeting.
Yep.
And then we get into trouble and like things don't last.
Yeah.
Let me ask you though, I have a follow-up question with the backpacks.
Oh,
And I
okay.
don't know if this is something, I'm not a mom, but I've seen kids. They're around.
They're around.
They're in places a lot of times I don't want them to be, but anyway, that's my problem apparently. No, with the backpack. So they do your kids ever give you any trouble about that? Because I'm just thinking of kids, a lot of the kids I know from my friends' kids every new year or new school year getting a new backpack and like something to look forward to. So how do you handle a kid who's like, "Mom, I'm not doing that again"?
So my kids have actually never asked for a new backpack. I think it's because we've just never made it an option. And I think they see us take care of their backpacks. I will say my son did get a new backpack. He had his backpack since kindergarten. He's now in, just about done with fourth grade. And his backpack was still in really good condition, but he grew a lot.
Mm.
And he carries a Chromebook, a lunchbox, a snack bag, headphones. Like his backpack was full, and it was really hard for him to carry around. He was really the straps were just falling off of him because of how much he's grown. And so when they outgrow a backpack, they definitely need a new one. So we did take him over winter break and we went shopping, and he got a new backpack that's more appropriate for like a preteen teenager. Uh, but I bought a brand name fancy backpack, and he's not going to get a new one unless he magically shoots up a couple of feet, which will happen eventually. But right now, he's not going to need it. My hope is that he won't need it for 4 more years. Um, so I guess I'm really lucky in that respect. Once he asked for a new lunchbox, and I did have one waiting in the wings, but it was because it was Cars, like the movie Cars, and he was going into second grade, and he was like, I'm done with cars. We upgraded to Minecraft, and now we've had Minecraft for a few years.
Yeah. Well, that's good that your kids are working with you. And
Yes.
I want to transition if you don't mind then, because we've talked about this before, but it'll like thinking ahead what you're working on for the summer. We've talked before about kids where, I think even one of our first podcasts where like some parents might have the attitude or maybe even have expressed that to you, like, oh, you're, making them think of money and it's
Yeah.
stressful or something to that effect. Like that's too much for their little heads or whatever to worry
Yeah.
about. But I think, you've explained it in a way that makes complete again, I'm not a parent and I don't even play one on TV, but it makes sense because it from your examples from your kids, you're giving them a sense of autonomy and empowerment and agency where they're like, I decide, money
Yeah.
where I'm putting it and what it's worth. And okay, I can get one of these or two of those. And talk a little bit about that and then what you've got maybe coming up that people can watch for.
Sure. So, my kids have gotten involved in the grocery shopping at this point because they have outrageous opinions on snacks and which fruit they like this week and which yogurt they like this week, and everything I bought last week they don't like anymore. So often I'll sit down with them and say, "Okay, here's my grocery cart, here," and I pull up the Instacart app and I'm like, "Does this look good? Like, is there anything else you want?" Sometimes I'll let them play around on the Aldi Finds tab of when I'm shopping at Aldi. And so they see how much things cost. And I remember recently they love those Nutella eggs, like the Kinder eggs.
Yeah.
As do I. I had I was in an airport in Germany and ate all the Kinder things, but I they're expensive. And they were like playing on the app one day and they were like looking at the Aldi finds and like, oh, there's the Kinder eggs. And my son clicked it and he's like, it's $8. He's like, do you get like 10 eggs? And I looked at it and I'm like, you get 2 eggs. And he's like, I don't want that. But I've always talked to the kids about money. I've always explained budgeting, like, what's mommy's favorite word? Budgeting. And I've always tried to keep it really healthy. Like this month, it's April now, but for March, we took a really deep breath on spending, like a really deep breath, because we bought a car, a new to us 2019 car that we I wanted so bad, and I love it, and I'm so glad I did it. But it took all the dollars to buy it. So I said, okay, we're going to be okay, but we're not spending in March. Like, we're buying what we need, and that's about it. And we went into crisis budget mode. We didn't stress, but I know how to change my budget to, it's just a couple of clicks of a button and I've got a crisis budget. So, P.S., if you want one, we can do that. So we did that. And a couple of days ago, it was like April 3rd or so. And my daughter's like, oh, it's April. I said, yeah, it is. And I thought she was going to say something nice about it being my birthday month or something like that. She's like, oh, we can spend money again. I was like, well, yeah, I mean, not too much, but yeah. Um, I think I feel like they've had this like really good experience with being exposed to it. And just last night, I felt really good because often my kids would come to me and like say they want something, but I've kind of trained them that if they want something, they say, "Mommy, can you put this on my Amazon wish list?" And that's how eventually they get stuff. Is I'll put it on their registry for the holidays or for their birthdays, or eventually I'll buy it or they'll earn it, something like that. But my son came to me yesterday and he said, the new Nintendo Switch is coming out, and it's like $500. And I was like waiting for the ask, and I was so nervous about the ask because video games is his whole world, and it makes him so happy, and that's his safe place, and there's so many things about it that are good for him. But I also don't want to spend $500 on a video game console that I already have the older version of. So I'm waiting, and he says, I have some ideas for jobs I'm going to do this summer so that I can earn the money. And he sat there, and I mean, none of these jobs are very realistic, but he sat there and he listed like he's going to babysit the neighbor's kid. Not a thing that's going to happen. That's okay. He was there. Oh, he was going to go like sell lemonade at the state park. He would like, there's so some things we could maybe do. And like, he had all these ideas of how he was going to make money. Not once did he ask me for money. It was, can you help me figure out how to do this? Can we do this on this weekend? Like, can you talk to so and so about me doing yard work? And I felt so good about that because I felt like I do have a lot of people tell me I'm stressing them out. I'm making them, they're kids. They shouldn't have to know anything about money. They shouldn't even know money is a thing. They shouldn't worry. And a night like last night told me, no, this is right. This is how they need to be taught because they're not going to expect handouts. They're going to be thinking about how do I earn because they know the value of money. He knows that $500 is an awful lot of money to ask from mommy. And that he can make it, that he's capable. Like he's 10 years old, and to think that he thought he's capable of making $500 this summer. He wanted to go work at a diner, the local diner that
Aw.
we're very close to. And I said, "Well, honey, you have to be a certain age to work there." He's like, "Is it 10? Is 10 the age?" I said,
Is
"No,
10 the magic age?
this is not the age." So that's how I feel about that. and
I
and
love that. I just want to say too for folks, I would much rather that. And again, because I've seen it in my family and with other kids where they're 14 and they don't even want to work. You know what I mean? Because again, mommy and daddy or mommy, whatever, or daddy, whatever, has
yeah,
given them without. And I think there's probably even a middle ground too, where it's like maybe if there's a parent who doesn't want to do, because also know budgeting like the back of your hand. Maybe
right,
someone else doesn't want to go to that level where they're whatever, but how about at least explaining to them, okay, mom and dad is going to get you this, but
yeah,
understand that it costs this much. And that's, you're going to have to take care of it. And it's not something that if you break, we're going to get you another one. Like, I think that is often missing. And even if it was that message, because like you said about the value, having them actually understand that it's not just something that can be replaced because you did not take care of it. You
right,
know,
yep,
you
yep,
oops, dropped it, the second iPad, oops, like that stuff drives me up a wall
yep,
because, there's just no value. And like your son understands the value, but I love his creative thinking, his innovation, like how, and it has him walking and talking through like the problem solving, really. And I think that's incredible because that's going to serve him well throughout his
Yeah.
life.
And you bring up a good point though, because I think a lot of parents do struggle to teach their children because generally we all have an unhealthy relationship with money. Either we had too much and didn't talk about it, or we had too little and had to worry about it all the time. Like very few people in America have had a generational stability when it comes to finances, because we haven't had a financially stable generation. Like if we look at the generations, like that just hasn't happened. We haven't had a solid generation that didn't experience crisis, that didn't experience depression, that didn't go through something traumatic financially. So when you want to teach your kids about mathematics, when you want to teach your kids about history and science and English, you send them to school, right? When you want to teach your kids about religion, you send them to religious school. We don't hesitate to send our children places to learn something. And that's one of the things that I'm hoping we cultivate this summer. I'm working alongside Megan at Joy World and creating classes. When we did this last summer, but this is going to be a really expanded version of what we did last summer,
Wow.
where parents can send their children to those of us that do know how to explain this in a way that children understand. And we're going to talk about budgeting. We're going to talk about income, how to make money, how to save money, and how to set savings goals. We're going to talk about, getting ready for college. We're going to do 2 sessions of different age groups. So we're going to have, I think we're doing second through sixth grade, and then seventh through ninth grade as separate cohorts, because very different things there. And we're gonna talk about investing and financing and finances in a way that kids can get excited about, that's tangible to them. For the younger kids, we're gonna make it artistic. So we're going to be doing like financial vision boarding, and we're bringing in some art into it. And for the older kids, we're going to be helping them come up with business models and how to really do these things for themselves. So
Can
I
I sit in?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And be like, don't mind the big kid in the back the door. Hi guys, I'm a little late to the party, but
Well, and I feel like, we don't hesitate to go to other classes and experts for advice, and finances should be no different. People shouldn't be ashamed or afraid to call someone like me, to call someone like Megan, and say, "I don't understand this. I need help." And I've had people send their kids to my Sunday school class because they're struggling to explain death to their children, and they're struggling to explain heaven and God. And great, that's awesome. Send them my way. I can do that. But I can also do that for budgeting, and I can do that for finances. So, it's normal to send your kids. Like my daughter, all of a sudden, the gymnast has decided she also wants to play violin. Now, while I can say no to a lot of things, it is hard to say no to the request to play a musical instrument in this house. My husband and I are both very into music, and so we will pretty much, don't tell them, but we'll pretty much say yes to anything music related. So we are saying yes. We did figure out how to squeeze this into the schedule. Um, but I said to her, we've got to talk about how this fits in. Like we've got to budget for it, all these things. I know how to play violin. I played violin my whole childhood. I can't teach her how to play violin. I am not good enough to teach somebody, and I haven't played in a long time. So I'm sending her to a professional, like a professional little teacher. She's also, just for the record, for everyone listening, she's getting a secondhand violin. It is my dream violin that I found on Facebook Marketplace, and hopefully everything goes smooth tomorrow night when I go pick it up, and I don't end up
wow.
like, in a gutter somewhere. So fingers crossed that this transaction goes well,
Bring
because
your LL Bean bag with you just in case.
just in case, right? I need to die with it. So I feel like it'll be a bad omen if I bring it along. But that's, there you get help. You go to professionals. So if this is something that you feel you want your kids to understand, you want them to have a better relationship with money than you did, maybe you want them to have more control, because their generation isn't going to see anything more stable than we've seen. That's not going to happen. History has proven that we will not have a perfectly financially stable generation. So why not set them up better than our parents did for us? And we've talked before. I'm not knocking my parents. They amazing, amazing parents. But they didn't have this available. They didn't have these resources. So stay tuned because we'll have flyers coming out really soon about those courses and how you can get signed up.
That is awesome. So I will remind people to follow Budget Through Life on Facebook and Instagram. I'm sure that once everything is set, Emily will start sharing that. And I will, of course, include it in the show notes, links to all that. But every week you'll see information about Emily and Budget Through Life because Budget Through Life is a sponsor of this podcast. So you will see that. But be sure to look out for that. That is the summer. It's coming up. So I know parents plan ahead. So when you're thinking about that, think about something like, and it's trust me, folks, I will give an endorsement that even though I'm not a parent, Emily is so good. I've watched her with her kids explain things. I've heard her retell explanation. So I know that what she's doing will be fun and informative. So, just in case you're wondering, like, I don't want to do that. No, trust me, your kids will learn and they're going to have a good time. And I did see pictures from last summer. So I just know it's going to be fantastic. So definitely check that out. Thank you so much, Emily. I mean, we could talk for hours. I know that you could about budgeting, and I could talk to you for hours. And I think I love the way that it just flows with conversation because budgeting is so much a part of everyday life. And so we could find ways to continue talking, but I will wrap it up there and just say any closing thought or words that you just want to share before we finally say adieu.
I just want to share one thing, and of course, it's about groceries because I don't want to start something new.
Grocery, that's a fun
Groceries,
word.
these words. This it's a very old word. But, as tariffs do come to fruition, pay attention to where they are and think about where your groceries are coming from. One of the areas, for example, that we were concerned about in our house was coffee. We don't make coffee here. So if you're buying something and using something very regularly that does not come from the United States, stock up on it now. This is just stock up on it. You don't have to like stock up like it's going to be 2 years, but stock up like it's going to be 3, 4 months. So we went out and stocked up on coffee because a couple of days ago we did run out of coffee and it was very scary here. Like I I was not a very good mom that day. I was not a good human that day. So think about that. If you're really worried and you're freaking out about taxes or tariffs, sorry, I'm also freaking about taxes this week because. So think about where your groceries are coming from and what you really can't do without and stock up on that.
Yeah, and I know we talked about that the other day. That's an important point because Mexico, right? Different countries, we don't make coffee here. Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. So that's a really good point. So again, I want to thank you. This was a fantastic conversation. And I know there's a lot of great gems in there for folks to, whether a parent or not, there's a lot of great information, especially as I said, this time right now, it's nice to get some reassurance or at least some guidance, some ideas to help people through. So thank you again. This is Budget Through Life with Emily Hickox has been my guest and also my sponsor. So I want to thank you. And what have we got coming up? I think I mentioned Gabby Lynn is next week from Reinvented Threads because Earth Day is April 22nd. We're going to talk about how, sustainable business practices. She is a very passionate person when it comes to the earth and sustainability and social responsibility, which I love, love, love. And we'll talk about that. And then Jeepers, now that I think about it, I don't really have a big lineup in May, so I better get cracking. I better get. I've been trying to get on the calendar with Lisa Laurie, who is the president of Marywood University, who is the first lay person president, and her secretary, or I should say, excuse me, her assistant has been very helpful going back and forth. But just when we look at a certain set of dates, 2 weeks goes by because I know she's incredibly busy. So hopefully that will happen. Maybe it'll have to happen after the school, semester after May. But if you have a person in mind that you're like, oh my gosh, Janine should talk to her, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, email me, message me on social media, Funny Wine Girl Janine on Facebook or Janine Luby, Funny Wine Girl on Instagram, Janine Luby on LinkedIn. Wherever you see me, please feel free to send me a message. Do not be shy. I've had a lot of people do that. And I always love the connection. If there's someone, of course, my caveat is I like to promote women. So, and it's not any kind of discrimination, but I really do like to raise the voices of women up. So, that's my one thing. But whatever the topic is, I'm always happy to hear about it. So keep that in mind. So I want to thank you for listening. And as I say every week, I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of my wine glass.